uh, the page. We are live. Hi, everyone. Thank you for
Hi.
joining
Hello.
us. Hi, Caleb and Brittany.
Hello,
Hello.
Joe.
I am going to change the view here. So, yes, those in the page, we are live. Hi, everyone. Here we go. Thank you for
Hello.
joining us. Okay, I think I probably solved that echo. If you guys can hear us in the live, please let us know. Looks like we are there. Um, okay. How's it going? How have you guys been? Been a long time.
Has been. I was trying to remember the last time we filmed and I couldn't.
It's been
Two
almost 2
years?
years now.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, I guess because it aired about a year ago, so that's probably the last time the audience would have heard. And then 2 years ago was the last time we were there filming.
Yeah.
Um, well, why don't we start with that? Why don't we give everyone an update on what you guys have been up to? I do believe last the audience Saul, you were living in McCarthy. You had bought some new property in Dan Creek, and we're looking to establish that there. What's some of the big highlights over the last 2 years?
Well, funny enough, we actually sold that property so that we could buy property 2 miles away from where we currently live. And then we sold our house so that we could move to that property that's 2 miles away. So that's our big news is we sold our house and sold the property so that we can build next to one of our friends out here.
That's amazing. So, for those who don't know, that's obviously still in McCarthy. How does that work? Is that land that you've had, or was that land that was for sale and you guys found it? And is it, I don't want to say closer to town, but is it in town versus out of town?
It's a little bit further from town and just 2 miles though. And we bought it from friends. So this last year, we just bought it this last year.
That's great. Did you let's see. Oh, there we go. Sorry, there was a little bit of a lag. For this new house, are you building it from scratch? Like we saw you build your current, I mean, because when we came to you guys, you already had at least the shell there, right? The frame.
We
What?
were living in it.
Yes.
It was hardly livable, but we were living in it.
Hmm.
And where is that is that where you're at now in the house you're building? Because it looks pretty built.
Yes.
Yes.
It's 97% done and we'll
Yeah.
finish it up before we move out next year. Um, But yeah, it's very different than the last time you guys saw it on the show. We actually have trim and our sheetrock is painted. Like, who would have thought that could happen? So,
Let's talk a little bit about McCarthy as a town. I think, we didn't get a chance to explore it a lot in the show, and then I think some fans will know that there was another show, Edge of Alaska, that was filmed in McCarthy. Caleb, you're third generation McCarthyian?
Right.
McCarthyite. Talk a little bit about the town and then Brittany talk about your first impressions. But Kayla, let's start with you. I mean, it's what you know. I know you did do a stint where you moved out for a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about McCarthy.
So McCarthy is an old mining town. Well, okay, step back a little bit. There's two towns right next to each other. One's Kennecott and one is McCarthy. Kennecott was the mining town and McCarthy was the party town. So in Kennecott, there was no drinking, no fighting, no nothing allowed. The only thing you were allowed to do was work. And so on the weekends, all the people that were employed by the mill and the mines and whatnot would go down to McCarthy, and that's where they got all of their entertainment. And so that's McCarthy's history. The mine shut down in 1938, and this place was pretty much a ghost town until the 90s, early 2000s. There was a few people living out here, but there were really no services. Actually, Kennecott was purchased as a National Historic Landmark in the late 80s when the ANILCA was passed and these parks were formed. So then the Park Service started investing in this area, and it made it possible for people to move out here and work for the park, work in other industries that supported tourism, and that kind of kickstarted tourist boom out here, which made it possible for people like us to live out here. Um, so that's kind of the history of McCarthy. It's we're in the middle of nowhere. We're the only town that exists within the boundaries of a national park. I don't think you can find that anywhere else in the world. So we're kind of unique in that we're surrounded by park land, and it makes things interesting. Park Service is a great neighbor most of the time, but then you start getting your little tiffs with them, and they carry a badge and a gun. So what can you do?
And why did
No.
your family move to McCarthy? Why, are they Alaskan through and through, or is your family from the lower 48 originally?
My folks are pretty much lifetime Alaskans. I don't know what initially made them think to move out here, but we moved out here when I was a little kid, and we started doing construction out here. We built a bridge across the river, because there was no vehicular access across the river to get into town. And not to pat my own shoulder, but we really opened up this town and made it what it is today with reliable contracting services and the bridge. The bridge really made a difference, because before that there was a footbridge, and everything that went into the lodges, everything that went to people's cabins, all got carted across that footbridge on a hand cart.
Is McCarthy, I've been there obviously a couple times and I love it and think it's beautiful. Would you describe it as a tourist town? I mean, I know there's residents there, but is it currently a tourist town?
McCarthy is a tourist town. All the services are open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and then everything shuts down. And there's a handful of us that stay behind for the winter, because this is our home. But most of the seasonal workers leave once the businesses start shutting down.
And the tourism is the national park, right? Those are the people, the kind of
Yeah,
tourists who would come, people who are looking for Alaska, maybe outside of the cruise, right? Because there's no
yeah.
easy access to McCarthy still, even
There,
for tourists.
there is no easy access. We live at the end of 60 miles of dirt road. There's railroad spikes from the mining days. There's sharp rocks, all these things that want to give you flat tires or potentially kick you off the road. And so getting out here is not for the faint of heart.
And Brittany, tell me a little bit about your first impressions of McCarthy, and talk also, people are asking about how you guys met. So I'm sure those are all somewhat connected. So talk about how you met and then your first impressions of McCarthy.
Well, I grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska, and we actually came out to McCarthy with our church a couple of times. So um, I don't remember meeting Caleb until I was like 19, but I knew his family and was friends with his cousins in Fairbanks, and that's how I knew about McCarthy. So like I'd been coming out here just a couple of times since 12, I was 12 or 13. Um, and then I came out when I was 19 for the 4th of July, and we made eyes at each other. And and then we started dating that September and got engaged that March or April, and then got married on the 4th of July, um, a year after we met.
So you had experience in McCarthy. When you're an Alaskan, you're in Fairbanks or Anchorage. When you come to McCarthy, are you coming as a tourist, or are you coming, meaning like, is a McCarthy even appealing to Alaskans as a place to visit?
Yes, for a lot of Alaskans. I only came because I was following my friends. And they were like, let's go there. And I was like, sure, whatever. And I never ever thought I would live somewhere like this. When Caleb and I were dating, he was like, oh yeah, I don't want to live in McCarthy. And I'm like, great, neither do I. This sounds, we're on the same page. And then about 6 months after we got married, he was like, I can make such a better living in McCarthy, which kind of is like, how does that work with how few people we have here? But he was at that age, he was treated as an adult who is fully capable in McCarthy. While working in Fairbanks, he had to prove himself, and so was lower wages and not something that worked for a growing family. And so yeah, we moved out here. I was like, I'll do summers here, not winters. So for several years we were here in the summer, And then we'd go back to Fairbanks or Palmer. We had both our babies in Fairbanks, both Gilbert and Olivia we had in Fairbanks. Eve I had in Seattle because of her heart condition. And so we would go back and forth. And then I think when it was right before I got pregnant with Eve, I really wanted chickens and ducks. And Caleb was like, well, we can't keep going back and forth if you want animals. So we came here because of him, but we like stayed year round because I wanted chickens and ducks. And we had that. And then we had like a year and a half solid here in McCarthy. And then the winter after I had Eve, I went and stayed with my parents because I don't know if anyone on here has lost a baby, but it does a lot to your mental health. And so I could not stay in McCarthy then. So I went and spent the winter with my parents, and Caleb went back and forth. And then once we came back, so that was spring of 2018. We've been in McCarthy year round since then. We don't have another residence. So
of course, this is something you don't need to talk about, but you have briefly on the show, and since you mentioned it, I'd love to just maybe have some follow-up for people who don't maybe know what you're referencing. Obviously, they watch on the show and they see two lovely kids. So as much as you feel comfortable, maybe talk just a little bit about your kids, and then the past, and then also let's talk about the kids where they are now. But maybe just if you feel comfortable elaborating a little bit about that for the people who don't know what you're referencing.
Yeah, so in 2017, we had our third child. Her name was Eve Marie, and she lived sorry, I didn't think I was going to cry about it. I love talking about her, so don't feel bad. She lived 10 and a half hours. She was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, which means that the left side of her heart was too small. So that paired with of wrongly developed lungs and pulmonary veins, and just she died very quickly. And we yeah, so that was Eve. Gilbert and Elevie never got to meet her because I had to go down to Seattle to have her. Because when I was going to give birth, there was a possibility of her living. There are children who have HLHS who live, but it was very unlikely. And the more we learned about the condition that she had, the less likely it was. Heart conditions are like 1% of babies, and she was like 8.5% of that 1%, and then an even smaller percentage of that 8.5%, and just crazy. But the reason that I was comfortable with talking about her on the show is because I never wanted her to be forgotten. She's a part of us, even when it hurts.
That's I really appreciate you sharing that and your openness, and you're getting a lot of love, and I think that's one of the things that people respond to both of you about is your willingness to share those things, the ups and downs. So thank you for sharing, and of course, sorry about your loss. In the currently, let's talk about the other two children and how they're doing. People are asking how old they are now and what are they up to.
Gilbert is 11, and he takes every possible chance to ride the snow machine anywhere and everywhere. He is definitely his father's son. He has so much confidence in the places he's willing to go. I don't know if any of you remember from the show that I don't like traveling on ice. I think frozen water is something you should just like let be. Gilbert has no qualms. He's like, let's go. And if you go to my social media, you'll see a few weeks ago, Caleb and Gilbert had some water fun where the snow machine went into the water and Caleb went for a swim. So they're like, yeah, let's go and have adventures. And I see that and I'm like, I'll stay home. But he's so adventurous and just really great. And then Elevie is 9, and she's everyone's best friend. Like she just walks into a room and she just makes friends with absolutely anyone who's willing. And it's really fun to see that outgoing personality. I think she gets that a little more from me than him. Outgoing personality.
Says Caleb, just a nod of the head.
Well, it's funny to us because we're both getting old and grumpy. So
We
when
really like staying home and
our kids make friends, like, wow.
You know that there's a I'll say a movement, but there's a lot of people talking about wild parenting.
yes.
And talk someone's asking about homeschooling. Let me talk a little bit about you guys' thoughts on wild parenting or parenting. I remember, I have two kids as well, and I remember coming to visit you guys, and it was so fun just because we were talking, and then I think one kid was like, yeah, playing on the snow machine, and then the other ones they're climbing those rocks, those big rock, those like all those rocks that were outside your house. So talk a little bit about being parents in the wild and wild parenting, I guess.
I call it free range parenting.
Thank you. Free range parenting, yes.
I haven't heard I feel like maybe I've seen a little bit about this wild parenting, so I don't know exactly what people are like referencing that, but I've always joked that I have free range chickens and free range children. They just go and do their own thing and then they come home.
That's something that people talk about missing. You don't really get that in cities. You don't get that like kind of open your doors, the kids will go out and play and come back. And I imagine in Fairbanks, but particularly you, Caleb, growing up, I imagine it was just, I mean, your back, like you mentioned, your backyard is a what, 100-acre national park?
13
100
million.
million. Okay.
13 million.
Acre national park. What was that? I mean, was that your playground as a kid? Was that, I mean, your
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I did calculus in high school and I would get partway through my homework, my brain would just be melting and I'd be like, I'm stepping out for an hour. I'm going to go ride my snow machine. And I'd go ride it for a little bit and I'd come home all refreshed and I'd finished up my homework and that was just life for me. So
That's
I believe in letting kids be kids.
Yep.
And kids are very smart and surprisingly capable. We've had a few illustrations of that where someone got hurt and the other kid dealt with it and then came and got the adults and said, hey, you need to come deal with it past my ability. And if you don't ever let kids be kids, they won't ever learn how to learn that independent thought process.
A kid can't be a kid, an adult can't be an adult.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's it. And so it sounds like they're thriving.
Oh, yeah.
They're really doing well. And then did you are they homeschooled or is there a school in McCarthy?
There's no school here. There are 5, 9, 10, 11 children from like September to May out here, and that's not enough to have a school. So yeah, we homeschool all 4 of the families that make up those 11 children homeschool. And
Are you homeschooled together or it's like individual homeschool and then you do
we're all individual. Sometimes we do things together. One family is 15 miles away, which is I don't like to we like to stay home. So and they like
yeah.
to stay home too. So 15 miles is a little bit too far. But I have a sister-in-law who has 2 little girls that we can sometimes do a little bit of projects, but they're both quite a bit younger than Gilbert and LV, but they're a 20-minute walk from us. And so we'll see them quite a bit. We just don't always do schoolwork with them.
There's a lot of kids for them to grow up around. And of course in the summer there's just probably an endless amount of new people and people to meet and talk to and that kind of.
Oh yeah.
We're getting a bunch of questions, so I'll jump into some of them. We'll talk a little bit about some of the experiences on the show before we get some follow-ups on some of the stories that we saw on the show. Just generally, I'd love to ask, what was it like being on the show? You talk a little bit about being outgoing or not, and how do you get recognized? The town of McCarthy already had a reality show. Were you nervous about, how you would be portrayed on the show? Those kinds of concerns. Well, so overall, what was it like being on a reality show?
I'm going to answer your last question first. I don't think I was ever concerned about how we were going to be portrayed on the show because we knew BBC was filming it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that BBC, there's a certain quality of, all of the documentaries and things, they're all so well put together. And then we found out that Nat Geo was picking it up. And again, Nat Geo's got a fantastic name. So
Yeah.
I was never worried about that, even though we kind of had a sour taste in our mouth from Edge of Alaska. It was a total cartoon, unapologetically so. It was scripted. It just wasn't real. And even with that bad taste in my mouth, I was never worried about it.
Yeah.
I knew it probably wouldn't be the way that we did it, but that's fine. We're not the ones making the financial decisions, right? So,
What was the biggest challenge? Like slowing down
the
or
biggest challenge was slowing down, realizing that we had to accommodate the cameras, and also talking about what we're doing when that's totally not um, first nature.
yeah, I it's always like when we talk to new cast, it's like just imagine the most annoying friend being around you. What are you doing right now? Why are you doing that? Wait, where are you going? Why are
Yep.
you using that tool?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And once we got done with the first season and it started becoming easier and easier to do it. And I mean, it's like any job out there. Eventually you start figuring things out and it's not as hard. But man, the first couple legs I was glad when they were done,
Tall learning curve.
for sure.
And
Yep.
what about you, Brittany? What about being on camera and stuff? How was that? Did that come naturally?
I think is what I find funny is in the early days, I feel like I did really well and Caleb was floundering. And then as we went, I felt like I floundered more and he did really well. So like by the time we were done, he was like a pro. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, even though we filmed for like 4 or 5 years. So it was a fun experience and I don't regret any of it. The last two legs that we did were the absolute best out of all 4 years. And I loved that we ended on those amazing notes because there were a few legs that were really hard. There were a few times I cried and but I do cry. So that's not like, oh man, they made her cry. But anyway, so there were definitely some hard legs, but the final two were just I have such fond memories of them. So
That's great. And we're talking about some of those stories. We're getting some questions about follow up on some of those stories, specifically on the greenhouse. People want to know how the greenhouse worked out.
it's great. We use it. I'm assuming you're talking about the greenhouse that's on our porch.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. We mostly put lettuce in it. And like last year I had a forest of lettuce. Like it grew so well. And then I'll put tomatoes in there and it's really nice having that just like right outside my door. I don't
You
think
don't even have to put boots on to go get lettuce.
don't. It's
Making
really nice.
sandwiches in the morning on my way to work, go down there first thing. I go in there before I even come up to the kitchen, grab a big old handful of lettuce. Pretty awesome.
Kind of awesome just to be able to like go outside, like literally like just grab a salad from your house.
Yeah.
It's really nice. That really doesn't happen till like June, July. We can do that, but we can start putting seeds in the ground in there earlier than we can the bigger gardens. So
You talk a little bit about, might as well talk about food. I know that a lot of people are really enjoying your social media content. You talk about cooking and recipes. We obviously, people who watch the show understand that food is seasonal in Alaska. But the majority of your diet, I assume, is stuff that Caleb has harvested and hunted, or what is it? You're close enough to that you can also get store stuff delivered. So it's sort of a combination of all of it, or talk a little bit about your diet out there.
technically, yes, you can have things delivered, but it's really expensive. So we shop whenever we go to town. We go to Costco, we go to Fred Meyer, and we do really big grocery shops. So you basically have feast or famine in with fresh stuff. Frozen things, I have several freezers. So we're always fine with frozen veggies and meat and fruit and everything. But if sometimes we won't go to town for 5, 6, 7 weeks or so. So we start getting low on fruit. If someone visits, they'll bring us some. But we kind of ebb and flow with how much we produce ourselves or hunt or fish ourselves and how much we just buy. So it varies. This last year we decided instead of going hunting, because Caleb really didn't have time. We bought a half a cow from someone in Kenny Lake, which is about 2 hours from us. And we've been really enjoying the beef. But we also have some salmon from throughout the summer. We joked that instead of going fishing, we traded our cooler use of our cooler as well as my babysitting skills to get fish. That's how we got fish. That we did a lot of trading.
It was very effective.
Yeah.
We'd send our coolers out with our in-laws and it would return with fish. Everybody was happy.
So I think the biggest thing that I try to explain, like on my personal social media, is that while we live very remote, and this is like wild for a lot of people, I wouldn't live here if I had to do all the hard things. Like the hardest thing we have is like making sure you plan your grocery plan well, but is the location. But like I have a well, I have indoor plumbing, I have freezers and a refrigerator. There's people who choose not to have all of those things out here, and I wouldn't have stayed if Caleb had insisted we keep living that way. We tried that for a little while when we were renting before we built this place. And I was like, I want indoor plumbing and freezers. Thank you.
Caleb, when you were growing up, was there those options as well, or was it more difficult? You know, there was no Amazon, there was no, I'm sure there was mail delivery planes, obviously, but do you find
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, we would save up our Amazon orders. This was before Amazon really took off and started offering free shipping. So we would save up our orders till we'd have 4 or 5 things and we'd order it all at once. We only get the shipping charge once. Nowadays it's all free shipping and I always joke when our mail comes out twice a week on a small Cessna and I always joke that the jungle has arrived because it's all Amazon boxes.
oh, Amazon, I like that. And do you speaking of McCarthy then and now, like does it feel different, that much different than, I mean, you know, you're younger, you know, it's like 20-ish years ago, and does your parents talk about how much it's different, or is it pretty much the same since you're in the middle of a national park?
McCarthy is very different now. There's a lot more people that have chosen to make this their home. Um, when I was a kid, there was maybe 30 of us out here, and uh, phone numbers were passed around by just the last 2 digits because the first 5 were all the same for everybody in McCarthy. So it'd be like, you know, a buddy of mine's like, hey, you should call my parents so we can schedule to play. Their phone number's 10.
That's awesome.
And you can't do that anymore. There's Colorado phone numbers, there's Fairbanks, there's Anchorage, there's
Fairbanks and Anchorage is still nice.
Pennsylvania, there's numbers from all over the US out here now. And uh so it has a very different feel. Plus there's just more people. I think there's around 100 people that live here year round now.
That's a lot larger. That's
30,
double. Um,
triple.
Triple. We're getting some let's follow up about uh homeschooling. Someone's asking if you also train the kids to survive, to I guess subsistence living, and that they're asking, you know, sounds like you have a balance. You know, you have a job, Caleb. I know you work construction around town, and then also seeing on the show doing all kinds of subsistence stuff, and families fish. So talk a little bit about that balance between having jobs and electricity and all the stuff that you mentioned, Brittany, that you wouldn't live without, and then also living off the land.
We take our kids hunting when we can. This last year has been kind of hectic and we never did get out and do any hunting, but you know, I take my kids to the gun range when I can.
Gilbert loves
To
fishing.
teach them how to shoot. Kids both love fishing. And you know, Gilbert's just getting old enough to where he could start carrying a backpack and we could actually go out and go on an extended hunting trip that requires hauling overnight gear, tents, sleeping bags, all that stuff. So yeah, they're getting older and more capable, and as they do, we should be able to start kind of broadening our horizons of what we've been able to do in the past.
Probably a lot of it is just the nature of living out there, right? I mean, kids are around more subsistence. Kids are around guns. Kids understand where their food comes from. They understand that grocery shopping is a challenge. Um, yeah, that's a good question. Thanks for asking that.
Yeah.
Paula is
They
asking.
view grocery shopping as throw as much stuff in the cart without mom and dad noticing.
A few times. I call it like, oh, by the way, teaching, like learning or like homeskilling instead of homeschooling is also something I tend to call it. Because I'm like, they're learning all these skills just as we're doing them. If we go fishing, they go with us. If we go hunting, they go with us. If we go to Costco, they go with us.
And they have to push the cart.
And they have to put
It's funny. It's like you go to Costco, you have to push the cart. If you go on the hunt, you have to do other things. You have
Carry the
to.
backpack.
we
Yeah,
still
yeah.
have chickens, and that's mostly Gilbert's responsibility. So he goes out and makes sure they have food and water, and he values those eggs a lot more. Oh,
Eggs are now valued by everyone. Currently, they are in a shortage. People maybe get some McCarthy eggs. Paula
I
is
think
We
asking
don't
about.
we don't we don't feel it here because we have our chickens, and then we have a friend who is really good friends with Brittany, who also has way more chickens than she needs. So we get entire coolers full of eggs delivered to us from time to time with orders to distribute, keep, do whatever we want with them. And
I think we currently, for a while, it was keeping your own flock. It really wasn't effective because of how inexpensive the eggs were at the store. And so it was just like people did it because they love it and they love the fresh eggs. And like nutritionally, it's amazing. But I think things have flipped where it's actually more cost effective to have your own flock.
It is.
Crazy. So.
Are there stores in McCarthy? People are asking if there's any like kind of
there,
store.
there's a grocery store, but I think it's 100% markup over what the costs are in Anchorage. So unless we're just desperate for something, we don't really shop at that store. It's too expensive.
It's
You'll
only
go in, you'll
been
get
in the
one
summer.
paper bag worth of groceries. It'll be $70.
Is that mostly for tourists to the grocery store, or is that open year round?
It's more for tourists, I would think. No, it's not open year round. It's
No.
Oh, okay.
only the 4 months.
Memorial Day to Labor Day is when
Right.
everything's open.
Yeah. You can, like, if we needed some groceries, but not enough to want to drive all the way to Anchorage, we can drive to Kenny Lake where they have, there's a little grocery store that brings in a bunch of Costco items, and their markup is not as insane as the one here in
Yeah,
McCarthy.
they're
So
very reasonable.
occasionally we'll do that, but most of the time, if we're going 2 hours, we might as well just head to Anchorage and get the rest of what we need.
That's great. We're getting some questions about bears, about wildlife. Someone specifically, I guess you must have posted a video, Brittany, of yourself going for a walk alone recently. Someone's asking about that. People are asking if you're afraid of bears, but let's elaborate more than on that. Just talk about living in harmony with being in the middle of a national, park with wildlife.
I mean, the bears are around. They're sleeping right now, so I wasn't concerned at all going for a walk. Usually in the summertime, I stick to more busy areas, so I'm rarely concerned about bears. Caleb's the one who will go tromping through the woods, and he brings a gun.
Walk softly and carry a big boomstick.
Caleb, do you have I'm sure you all do, but Caleb, I imagine growing up and being around, you've had a lot of bear encounters. Do you have a favorite encounter with a bear?
Well, this bear right here on our railing
Yes.
tried to eat me a year ago. Obviously, he did not succeed.
So that kind of is a spoiler alert there with the what happened?
So we had and I'm allowed to talk about this because I did everything legal and above the law.
As
Um,
you as
we,
always, it's great. Yes.
we had a grizzly trying to get into our chicken coop, so I shot it. It was in our yard. It was a small one, and I'm allowed to shoot one per year here in the hunting unit that we're in. And later that night, I had to pee, and I looked around the yard because I knew it was out there, and it was gone. I had a spotlight, so I was shining the spotlight around
Zombie
it
bear.
there.
So I
I'm
don't.
like, oh no, this is bad. And the next morning, I went out there with my pistol. I have a 44 Magnum, and there's a path of destruction like 4 feet wide through the forest floor that I'm following. And I get like 50 feet into the woods off the edge of our clearing, and I see what pulled the little bear away. It was a big bear.
Oh,
Um, I was looking at this big bear, and I was also looking at my little tiny pistol in my hand. I'm like, this is not adequate. I need to go get a real gun. So I start backing out of the situation, and the bear charged. And there was a tree directly halfway between me and the bear. I had to wait till he got past that tree to fire. And by then he's 15 feet away. His chest looks like massive. And hit him twice with my 44. And then I came back and got my hunting rifle and tracked him through the underbrush and finished him off. But my heart was racing.
so
Let's,
that's I mean that's no
that's,
joke. Like that, I mean
it's
that
in our yard.
the bear would have the bear would have killed you for real, most
Yes.
likely.
He tried to eat me.
Yes.
And fortunately, I stopped that from happening.
And that really is uncommon, but that happened because he thought you were basically going after his food, right?
He was guarding, he had pulled that smaller bear into the forest, had eaten part of it, and then had buried it. Bears commonly will take and bury their food with moss and underbrush, and they pee all over it and just kind of mark it as theirs. And they are very defensive of the general zone around that food.
Babies and food. That's the time you have to be concerned about a bear. If they have babies or food, they're protecting.
So
Otherwise, they don't
I had to call the
really care about
troopers
us.
and tell them about what I did, and I had to turn one of the bears in, and I kept the big one. So
So with you had a 45 the two
44 Magnum.
in the 44 Magnum, two shots was not enough to completely stop the bear.
Oh no, not even close. It would have expired from that eventually, but it takes bears a while to die. They are very tough.
In the two shots, did it like that at least stop the bear from being able to charge, or did it kind
It
of
turned
ran?
him.
It turned okay.
It turned him, and he departed through the forest.
Ooh. And that I mean, and that's probably is that your I don't think you can get much scarier than that. Like literally you're about a couple, what you said, a couple feet from being just completely mauled.
Yeah, well, that's not my most scary bear incident. The worst one was I was 18, and I was out moose hunting, and I got charged by a sow and a cub, and uh I racked the bolt on my rifle to fire, and when I pulled the trigger, it went click. And
Just
I'm staring down this bear literally 10 feet away. And what happened, I'm pretty sure, is I worked the bolt on my rifle so fast the shell didn't have a chance to pop up and get caught by the bolt and put into the chamber to fire. That one affected me. I have a hard time sleeping in a tent now because every little sound of birds chirping or the squirrel running through the brush, I think is a bear trying to get into my tent.
I've never been even that close to any kind of I mean I've seen bears, but yeah, I also yes, but that's terrifying. What about you, Brittany? Have you had any encounters with wildlife?
Do you think I would still be here if I had any of those encounters? Like, I actually genuinely think it was God's grace that the first like 5, 6 years that I was out here, I never encountered a bear unless Caleb was right there about to shoot it, or I was in a vehicle or very easily, like four-wheeler, very easy to move away from it. I rarely encountered it. My sister in Anchorage had two bears go through her yard over the like 2 different years, I think it was. And I laughed and I was like, I see less bears than that in my yard.
Yeah, she's got a 7 foot tall fence. The bears just go up and over the fence
Yeah.
like it's nothing.
Oh man. No, we've had bears in our yard. We've had scary moments. Nothing like I haven't been in the moment of like what he's experienced. And um uh yeah, I try to like generally go where there's more people. So then at least I just have to be faster than them.
We're getting some questions about, I guess, Caleb, pilot jobs. People are asking if you take any jobs flying. And talk just a little about flying. How did you get your pilot's license, and how did you decide to become a pilot?
So I am not rated as a commercial pilot, so I cannot take any flying for hire jobs. I got started as a kid. There's a local charter company here, and the pilots were friends and neighbors of ours. And he would, they had 3 flights a day to Chitna, which is about a half-hour flight each way. And oftentimes, one of the directions would be empty airplane. He'd be like, anytime he knew he was empty coming back, he'd be like, "Hey, you want to come?" And on the empty leg, he'd let me fly, and I just fell in love with it. So when I was 18, I started taking my flying lessons and got my license when I was 18.
You got it, what was it, 1 hour before your dad?
Yeah, got my license a few minutes before my dad did.
You
I got
mean at that
first
age,
grade
or
license.
like literally at the same time?
At the
Same
same
time.
time. We both studied at the same time, and we took uh the verbal test together, and then I went on the check ride, and then he went on the check ride.
Nice. How often do you have the opportunity to fly?
It's been a while. Our airplane had to be sent in to get rebuilt because of some serious structural issues, and we have not gotten it back from that yet. So it's been a year and a half. Airplane stuff just takes forever.
Do you did you imagine getting a pilot's license would allow more freedom? Hey, you can like not you don't have to travel that road. Like you can just
We had to have an airplane to do that, so really he's never experienced that
We
more
have
than
a
once.
little bit with the
I
172,
think we went to town like once or
but
twice.
typically it's not cost effective for me to fly into town to do my work there because I often uh, am pulling a trailer and bringing back thousands of pounds of goods for construction, for home, for whatever. So airplane never really is good for that. It's good for around here scouting. I use it to find firewood sources, know where the moose are, gain access to places like my Dan Creek property.
yep.
Um, Stress relief. Airplanes are a fantastic stress reliever because your only focus can be on the mission at hand, which is piloting the aircraft through the air. And it is so freeing to leave Earth, defy the laws of gravity, and just you're in the air with the birds. It's amazing.
I mean, you're in the air with the birds, but you're also in the most incredible views of any pilots in the world where you can just circle around and look around.
And I have many friends who would agree with that. I have friends who have flown all over the world and they say this is their favorite place to fly.
And speaking of, talk a little bit about your backyard, which is a glacier. That's not common for a lot of people. Is that something that is a part of your life, or is it just like, oh, it's there, or is that how much are glaciers and nature in general integrated into the day-to-day fabric of your life?
It depends on what's going on. I mean, the glaciers have been a part of my life since I was a little kid. We travel on them. We use them to get places. This glacier right next to us has a huge lake at the toe of the glacier, and we use that to get from place to place because it's a really good, quick shortcut across the valley. Because it's flat and there's no brush and there's no road. You just go across it. You point any direction you want on a snow machine. So to me, it's a big part of my life. I've just always been around glaciers.
Is glacier kind of like your freeway?
Sort of. The rivers are more of our freeway, but the glaciers make the river. So
Right. And so we're getting a follow-up question. Oh, someone wanted to know what your relationship is to eagles. Do you have eagles, a lot of eagles, and specifically, have you ever been charged by an eagle?
I've never been harassed by eagles. There's a decent amount of them out here. They're a predator. They affect our sheep and moose stocks. So in general, um,
How does an eagle affect the sheep and the moose?
they eat the babies.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
An eagle can knock a baby sheep off a cliff in one dive, grab it and pull it over the edge, and then it'll sit in a tree and wait for it to stop flopping around and go down and eat it.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Are they
Brittany's like,
are
I don't want to know that.
ruthless. They are
That's
ruthless predators.
yeah. So you have never been charged though.
No,
Which is
birds of prey aren't really an issue
Not
as far
here.
as that. We have a sparse enough population that every once in a while you see them flying around. That's about it.
People are asking also about fuel. So what is the relationship to fuel in McCarthy? There's obviously no gas station. Do you have to bring it in? Do you load up fuel? What's the relationship to fuel?
Our relationship to fuel is a little bit different than other people because my folks have a they distribute fuel out here. They have all the products. And so we get fuel at a fairly reasonable price out here, and it's self-serve for us. I have a key to the fuel place, so I go get fuel whenever we need to. I've got somewhere around 220 gallons of storage here, so I stock that up about once a month.
And what are you commonly using the fuel for? Is it fuel for heating, fuel for travel, fuel for
Fuel, we don't use a lot of fuel for heating anymore because we put a second wood stove in our house, so we're almost primarily heated by wood. The majority of what we use gasoline for is running our generators and then also running our snow machines and four-wheelers for our general transportation around the valley.
And then, Brittany, talk a little bit about, we're talking about fuel for supplies. Talk a little bit about cooking and cooking supplies and recipes. Do you find, the need to, can you pick up any cookbook or do you have, is it more like a subsistence type cookbook? Talk a little bit about your cooking style and your recipe style, which I know a lot of people appreciate hearing about.
I have a whole bookshelf full of cookbooks that range from subsistence to uh complete decadence that I'm like, I'm not gonna make that, but it's beautiful. Um I treat a recipe like the point at which to deviate for a few reasons. One, I don't always like to follow instructions. And two, we run out of ingredients or it's a specialty item and I'm like, well, I don't have that. So I've actually joked about writing a cookbook that says, so I don't have that, and like all the substitutes I've used. And sometimes you substitute like this one spice for that spice and it's no big deal. And then there's times when I'm like, oh, I want to make this. And then I realize that there's 10 ingredients and I've substituted 8 of them. So have I made the recipe?
That's a different, I don't know if that's the same, you're right, exactly.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it comes down to just making sure you have a well-stocked pantry of the ingredients you need for baking. Like it's pretty simple on you can do a lot of things with very basic ingredients. So I try to just have very basic ingredients and we go from there.
Were you always into cooking and baking and culinary arts?
Um, I loved making cookies as a kid. I was really good at making chocolate chip cookies. I also loved eating the cookie dough. Um but I remember making like dinner rolls a couple of times when I was a teenager, but I think it wasn't until we got around the time we got married that I really got into doing fun things with food and baking more. And then there were a few years as the kids were younger that, I mean, if I made bread in a week, I was winning. And and then as the kids got a little bit older, there were a couple summers that I baked bread and sold it here in McCarthy.
Oh,
But then I baked so much and we were having issues with our oven and I just got burnt out by that. So I took a very long break. But the kids and I are talking about doing a little pop-up bakery this summer again. So we'll see. They like baking.
that's great. We have about 10 more, 5 or 10 more minutes. So I'll just let everyone know if you have any additional questions. I'll try to get to most of them. In the meantime, while we're getting those talk a little bit about how people can stay in touch with you. I know, Brittany, you're pretty active on social media. Talk a little bit about social media and posting and how people can follow what you guys are doing out there.
If you want to follow what we're doing, it's mainly me. Caleb just has his personal profile that he doesn't necessarily share. Um, he'll interact with people on other comments though. But Britt Rowland Life is both my social media on Facebook and Instagram. And I share sometimes what we're doing. This next week we did a fun project downstairs that I'll share about. I do a lot of stuff with baking. I have a few recipes on there, but it's hard to share recipes when I'm like, well, here's what I kind of did. But I share a lot of those things. I share what I'm teaching the kids. I share what else do I do we
Go out and do stuff.
when we go out and do stuff. We just
Usually gets well photographed.
when we went to friends on Saturday, they have a dog sled team, so we got to do dog sled stuff. So I'll be sharing a little bit about that. In January, we went on a vacation on a cruise, and I alluded to it, but I haven't actually like shared a bunch of that. But that's you get to see a lot of the things that would never show up on Life Below Zero. So I think that's what's really fun about the social media.
I wish on the show we could go on a cruise. That'd be that'd be
Let's do that. We loved the cruise. We went on a 2-week cruise, and we already have the next one planned, and it was amazing.
we'll get a couple more questions in. We're getting a couple questions about electricity in generator use. People are asking, is McCarthy uh possible for wind turbines, renewable energy, solar, or those type of things? And then someone's asking if you use electricity to run the stove or a generator.
So McCarthy does not get a reliable enough wind for wind turbines. A lot of people out here have solar systems, but any battery system is really hard to get a good return on your investment. We run a Honda 2000 24/7. It's plumbed into a 55-gallon drum, and we fill that up about every 2.5 weeks. And everybody has their own way of doing it out here. So
Some people have solar and generators. Some people have a generator, but they cycle it on and off. So they'll do like a propane fridge and freezer. So then it's just drawing less. So they might have it on for a few hours in the evening. And we tried that for a year or two when we were out here. And then as time went on, I was like, if we're going to be here, like, I just want it to be like town, but here.
You want to flip the switch whenever you want to flip the lights. the switch
Exactly. I
on.
mean, I have a nice, Caleb got me a really nice espresso maker last year for Mother's Day. And I can't run anything else if I run it without turning on the second generator. So sometimes I'm like, this is like, what is this? Because in town you wouldn't have an issue at all. But in town, if you were running that every single day, you're going to have a higher bill. And so there's trade-offs there where it's like you're paying this way or you're paying that way, and you're adjusting how you go about things this way or that way, like depending on where you live, and everywhere has pros and cons.
Well, I like that too. Like, no matter what you're doing or you're eating or you're building, you are in touch with the raw materials. Even if it comes from Costco or it comes from something that Caleb harvested, you know where where it's coming from. When you flip a switch, where that electricity is coming from. I think that's something that is a big difference between, a lot of places in lower 48. Someone's asking how Piper is doing.
She is great. She is fixed, so she will not have any more puppies.
Someone did ask about the puppies. Are they around, or where are the puppies?
There's a few puppies that are here in town. We didn't keep any of them. We're one dog family. She's good. She's plenty for us. There's 2 dogs that live here pretty much year round from her last litter. And we see them from time to time, and one is a ginormous monster and so sweet, and then the other one is very sassy like Piper, but very sweet also.
Piper's a great dog. We loved seeing Piper on the show, especially like when Piper jumps on the the four-wheeler with you, Caleb. And the saddest times is when Piper jumps on, you're like, nope, not today, not this time.
Yeah.
Who likes the four-wheeler more, Piper or Gilbert?
Piper uses it as a means to get to go with us.
Yeah.
Um, like she would rather run most of the time, so unless she's tired. So I would say Gilbert likes the four-wheeler and snow machine more than Piper. Um, but I feel like Piper tolerates the machines, and it's only because she wants to be with us.
Well, that's great. Well, I guess sort of lastly, let's any follow-up you want to say to the audience. You know, it's I know you do have social media, so you can talk to them directly, but a lot of people have watched you guys over the years. A lot of people appreciate being let into your lives and feel connected. You're getting a lot of people saying like, when are you going to go back on TV? And you're getting a lot of people
Whenever we get offered.
asking just saying thank you for sharing and you have a lot of fans. Any final words from each of you to them or final for now or
You want to say anything?
I don't have anything to say.
I really appreciate everyone who watches the show because if it weren't for you, we wouldn't have had the four or 5 years that we were filming. And I think it's really fun when people interact with me, whether it's about one of the episodes or just checking in. If I don't post for a few days or a few weeks, I have several people who say something, and I think that's really sweet to have this connection around the world that I wouldn't necessarily have had without the show. And it's I have very fond memories of it, and I have beautiful family videos, professionally done family videos, and it's been a lot of fun. I think it I my dad I'm gonna get a little emotional here again. Just to end it with this. My dad recently said something about how the show really helped me get out of the slump I was in after Eve. And that means a lot to me. That like just the getting out and doing stuff. I was definitely in a bit of a spiral around the time we started filming because it was so fresh after Eve. And so it was um that's something I will always appreciate about the show is it got me out and doing and growing again, and it's helped a lot. And we wouldn't have that without all of our audience. So,
that's amazing, people. So would you consider doing it again if there was the right opportunity?
yes, absolutely.
Is that a yes from you, Caleb? I don't know.
Yeah, for me.
Yeah.
Okay,
It was a
great,
good
great.
experience.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people learned a lot, and I enjoyed watching your stories and watching you be parents and Caleb, particularly I have two sons and watching your relationship to your kids and being out there and getting them out. I really enjoyed um, watching your stories. So just want to say again, thank you for sharing. And if people want to continue following you guys, they can go to.
Britt Rowland Life. Just search that on Instagram or on Facebook and you'll find me.
That's awesome. Well, thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we're out. Let's see. Can you see if it's out?